My name is Norman. I'm 35 years old and the CEO of a $30 million cybersecurity company I built from nothing. Tonight was supposed to be our celebration, 10 years of growth, blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Instead, my father Walter stood up, grabbed the microphone, and announced to our investors that my sister Jessica would be taking over as CEO. She has zero experience in tech. Just keep going, I said, my voice cold as ice while the room fell silent. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of betrayal and redemption. Growing up in the Anderson household meant living with sky-high expectations. My father, Walter, built his construction business through sheer determination and brutal work ethic. He expected nothing less from his children, though the standards always seemed to shift depending on which child he was addressing. Norman, a 96% isn't good enough. Why not 100? He would ask, looking over my report card with disappointment clouding his eyes. Meanwhile, Jessica would bring home straight B's and receive praise for her well-rounded approach to education. My mother, Diana, was the peacekeeper. Whenever tension rose between me and my father, she would step in with her gentle voice, "Walter, he's trying his best." But her intervention never changed his mind. She chose family harmony over confrontation, which meant my father's word was law in our household. Jessica was 3 years older than me, and from early childhood, she possessed a magnetism that drew people in. She was pretty, sociable, and knew exactly what to say to make adults smile. She became the golden child without having to break a sweat. While I struggled to earn a nod of approval, Jessica collected praise effortlessly. My saving grace was my younger sister, Sarah. 4 years younger than me, she looked up to me with genuine admiration. "Show me how it works, Norm," she would say, watching intently as I dismantled and rebuilt computers in our shared basement space. Sarah was the only one who seemed to recognize my potential without requiring proof. Computers became my refuge at age 9, when my uncle gifted me an old desktop he no longer needed. While other kids played sports or joined social clubs, I spent hours learning programming languages, understanding networking protocols, and eventually exploring cybersecurity concepts. Those computer games won't get you anywhere in life. My father would scoff whenever he found me coding late into the night. "You need to learn real skills, Norman." Look at Jessica, already interning at my friend's marketing firm. What he called games were actually my early attempts at designing security systems. I couldn't explain to him that I was learning to protect digital information, because in his world, if you couldn't touch it, it wasn't real work. Everything changed when I turned 16. Our high school's database was breached, exposing sensitive student information. The administration was in panic mode, with no idea how to contain the damage. During a computer class, I noticed a vulnerability in the school's network security that likely allowed the breach. "Principal Thompson, I think I know how they got in," I said after knocking on his office door. Initially skeptical, he eventually gave me permission to demonstrate the security flaw. Within 3 hours, I had identified the vulnerability, created a patch, and implemented additional security measures that would prevent similar breaches in the future. The principal was astounded. "You may have saved this school from a major lawsuit, Norman," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "You have a real gift." That evening, I rushed home with a letter of commendation from the school board. "Mom, Dad, look," I exclaimed, pushing the paper toward them at dinner. My father scanned it briefly before passing it to my mother. "That's nice, Norman. Did you finish your college applications yet? The deadline for State University is coming up. No congratulations, no recognition that I had done something significant." Jessica, home from college for the weekend, glanced at the letter. "Computer stuff again? At least it's something for your college application," she said with a dismissive shrug. Only Sarah understood the magnitude of what I'd accomplished. Later that night, she knocked on my bedroom door. "That was really cool what you did, Norm. You're like a superhero, but for computers." That moment crystallized something for me. I didn't need my father's approval to validate my passion. I didn't need Jessica's understanding to know I was on the right path. From that day forward, I committed fully to my vision, regardless of who believed in it. I would build something so undeniably valuable that even my father couldn't dismiss it. What I didn't realize then was that this decision would set me on a collision course with my family's expectations, eventually forcing me to choose between my vision and my desire for their approval. College was where everything began to take shape. Northwestern University's computer science program introduced me to people who spoke my language, who understood the digital world was the future. Among them were Marcus and Ethan, who would become not just my best friends, but the co-founders of what would eventually grow into a $30 million enterprise. Marcus was a programming prodigy. While I was good with security systems, Marcus could write code that was so elegant and efficient it was like watching a master pianist play. The computer shouldn't have to work any harder than necessary, he would say, optimizing our early software until it ran like silk. Ethan was our marketing genius. Charismatic and forward-thinking, he understood how to translate our technical jargon into benefits that even the most technology-averse client could grasp. "People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it," became his mantra as he crafted our company's message. Our dormitory room transformed into our first office. 3 desks crammed together, monitors stacked on textbooks for proper height, and whiteboards covering every wall. We pooled our savings, a meager $2,000, and officially incorporated ShieldTech security solutions during our junior year. Those early days were brutal. We attended classes during the day and built our company at night. 20-hour workdays became normal. Meals consisted of instant ramen and energy drinks. My father's voice echoed in my head during moments of doubt. "Those computer games won't get you anywhere." I channeled that doubt into determination. "We need to target small businesses," I explained during one late-night strategy session. "They can't afford enterprise-level security, but they face the same threats as larger companies." Our first product was a security package designed specifically for small businesses, priced at a point they could afford. We offered not just software but education, teaching our clients why cybersecurity mattered to their bottom line. For months, we scraped by with minimal clients. Then came the moment that changed everything. A local accounting firm that had purchased our basic package was targeted by ransomware. Their systems detected the attack using our software and automatically isolated the affected computers before the malware could spread. "You saved us from losing everything," the owner said, his voice breaking with emotion during a phone call. "Our client data, our reputation, everything would have been gone." Word spread quickly throughout the local business community. Small businesses began to see cybersecurity not as an optional luxury but as essential protection. Our client list grew from 10 to 50 within 2 months. Then came the email that truly launched us forward. A venture capitalist had heard about our work from one of our clients. "Your approach to making enterprise-level security accessible to smaller organizations is filling a critical gap in the market," the email read. "I'd like to discuss investment opportunities." I still remember sitting in that coffee shop, 3 recent college graduates facing a polished investor in an expensive suit. He slid a term sheet across the table, offering $500,000 for 15% of our company. My hands trembled as I signed the document, officially valuing our dorm room startup at over $3 million. "This is just the beginning," Ethan said as we celebrated that night. "We're going to change how small businesses think about security." With the investment, we leased a small office space, hired our first employees, and expanded our product line. I worked tirelessly, often sleeping under my desk rather than wasting time going home. The company became my life, my identity, my redemption. Each milestone brought new challenges and opportunities. We developed a network monitoring system that could detect unusual patterns before they became breaches. We created user-friendly dashboards that allowed non-technical staff to understand their security status at a glance. We built training modules that turned employees from security liabilities into security assets. 3 years after that first investment, ShieldTech had 30 employees and was generating $2 million in annual revenue. We moved to a larger office downtown, with proper meeting rooms and a dedicated development space. My father still referred to my work as computer stuff, but I no longer needed his validation. The market was validating our vision every day. What I didn't realize was that, as ShieldTech grew, it would become the unexpected center of my family's attention, for reasons I never anticipated. 5 years after founding ShieldTech, we reached a significant milestone, a $10 million valuation following our Series B funding round. Marcus, Ethan, and I had defied the odds. What began as 3 college friends with a shared vision had transformed into a respected name in cybersecurity, with clients across 43 states. Then came the call that would forever alter the relationship between my professional success and my family dynamics. "Norman, it's about Dad." My mother's voice trembled through the phone. "Anderson Construction is bankrupt. The bank is foreclosing on the house." The details emerged slowly, painfully. My father, the man who had built his business through real work, had made a series of catastrophic financial decisions. He had overextended, taking on projects beyond his company's capacity, and failed to adapt to changes in the construction industry. His pride prevented him from seeking help until it was too late. "Everything's gone, Norman," my mother explained, her voice hollow with shock. "The business, our savings, potentially the house. Your father hasn't left his study in 3 days." Without hesitation, I flew home. The man who greeted me wasn't the towering, confident figure of my childhood. My father had aged a decade in months, his shoulders hunched with the weight of failure. "I never thought it would come to this," he admitted, unable to meet my eyes. 40 years of work, gone. In that moment, the years of seeking his approval vanished. This wasn't about proving myself anymore. It was about family. "We'll figure it out, Dad," I promised. And we did. I paid off their most pressing debts, hired financial advisors to restructure the remaining obligations, and purchased a new home for my parents, more modest than their previous one, but comfortable and mortgage-free. "You don't have to do this," my father protested weakly when I showed him the deed to the new house. "I want to," I replied simply. Word of my intervention spread through the family. Jessica, who had bounced between marketing jobs without finding her footing, approached me at my parents' housewarming party. "It's amazing what you've done for Mom and Dad," she said, sincerity in her voice for perhaps the first time when addressing my achievements. Then came the pivot I should have anticipated. "Actually, I've been thinking about making a career change. Something more stable." A week later, my father called with what he presented as a brilliant solution. "Jessica needs a fresh start, and you need someone to manage your staff issues, right? She has a business degree and experience in corporate environments." The pressure was implicit but clear. After what I'd done for them, surely I could do this small thing for my sister. Against my better judgment and the concerned expressions from Marcus and Ethan, I created a human resources director position for Jessica. Problems arose almost immediately. Jessica arrived late and left early, explaining she needed flexibility for her transition. She made hiring recommendations based on personal connections rather than qualifications. She implemented policies without understanding their impact on our technical teams. "We need to talk about the new vacation policy Jessica implemented," Marcus said one morning, frustration evident in his voice. "3 of our senior developers are updating their resumes. They say it shows we don't understand the tech industry culture." I spent hours correcting Jessica's mistakes while trying to protect her reputation within the company. When employees complained, I absorbed their frustration rather than redirecting it to my sister. When projects were delayed because of staffing issues she created, I worked weekends to catch up. "You can't keep covering for her," Ethan warned during a private lunch. "The company isn't your family's safety net." But how could I explain to my friends that after years of seeking validation, I finally had something my family valued? My father called weekly to check on Jessica's progress, showing more interest in my company than he ever had before. During a rare dinner with just Sarah and me, my younger sister provided the perspective I needed but wasn't ready to hear. "Norman, you need to know something," she said carefully. "Jessica tells everyone she's practically running your company now. When you're not around, she takes credit for ShieldTech's success." "She's exaggerating," I said dismissively. Sarah shook her head. "It's more than that. She told Mom and Dad that you're technically the CEO, but she's the one making the important decisions because you're too caught up in the technical details." I laughed it off, but Sarah's words lingered in my mind. That night, I accessed the company email system and searched Jessica's communications. What I found sent a chill through me. She had been emailing clients introducing herself as Executive Director of Operations, a title that didn't exist at ShieldTech. She had been conducting meetings with department heads without my knowledge. The boundary between family loyalty and business integrity was beginning to blur, and the consequences would soon become impossible to ignore. The situation with Jessica deteriorated rapidly over the next few months. What began as minor overreaches evolved into a systematic attempt to position herself as my equal, or even my superior, within the company I had built. One Tuesday morning, I walked into our quarterly strategy meeting to find Jessica already seated at the head of the table, a position I typically occupied. "I saved you a seat," she said cheerfully, gesturing to an empty chair beside her as if she were doing me a favor. The confusion on my executive team's faces was evident, but no one wanted to create an awkward scene. I took the offered seat, conducted the meeting professionally, and waited until we were alone to address the issue. "Jessica, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but there are established protocols in these meetings," I explained calmly. She rolled her eyes. "Norman, you're being ridiculously formal. We're family. Besides, I've been telling the team we need to shake things up around here. The hierarchy is too rigid. The hierarchy exists for a reason. I'm the CEO. These are my direct reports. You're the HR director." "Labels," she dismissed with a wave of her hand. "Dad always said titles mean less than results." Our father had never said any such thing, but contradicting her would only extend an already unproductive conversation. The situation worsened when I discovered Jessica had begun referring to herself as co-leader in conversations with staff. Several employees approached me privately, confused about the chain of command. "I received conflicting directions," explained Travis, one of our senior security analysts. "You told us to prioritize the hospital client's firewall upgrade, but Jessica said to focus on the new client presentations instead. Each incident required damage control, taking time away from actual business growth." Marcus and Ethan watched with increasing concern as more of my energy was diverted to managing my sister rather than leading our company. The breaking point came when Jessica nearly lost us Meridian Healthcare, a client worth over $1 million annually. During what should have been a routine contract renewal meeting, Jessica attended uninvited and promised features our platform couldn't deliver within the time frame she suggested. "Your sister assured us the new compliance module would be ready next month," Meridian's CIO said when I called to discuss contract details. "That's why we agreed to the price increase." I spent 3 days restructuring development schedules and personally calling in favors from our engineering team to make her promised deadline possible. The cost to the company was significant, not just in overtime pay but in delayed projects for other clients. When I confronted Jessica in my office, her response left me speechless. "You should be thanking me," she said defiantly. "I secured a 20% increase in their contract value. By promising impossible deliverables, we're working with sensitive healthcare data. We can't rush security implementations." "This is exactly your problem, Norman," she sighed as if explaining something to a child. "You get so caught up in the technical details that you miss the bigger business picture." My patience finally snapped. "This is my company, Jessica. I built it from nothing while you were bouncing between marketing jobs. I welcomed you here as a favor to our parents, but you're undermining everything we've worked for." Her expression hardened. "But we're family, Norman. Family businesses are meant to be shared. Mom and Dad agree with me, by the way. They think you've gotten too controlling since the company grew." This revelation stunned me. "You've been discussing company matters with our parents?" "Of course," she said casually. "Dad's been giving me great advice on how to help you manage things better. He thinks you need a strong second-in-command who understands business beyond just cybersecurity." Later that week, my parents called, suggesting Sunday dinner at their house. What I thought would be a normal family gathering turned into an intervention of sorts. "Norman," my father began once we were seated in the living room, "your mother and I are concerned about how you're treating Jessica at the company." I stared in disbelief. "How I'm treating Jessica? She's trying to contribute, to help grow what could be a real family legacy," he continued. "But you're resisting her input at every turn." "Walter," I said, deliberately using his first name, "Jessica has been with the company for less than a year. She has no background in technology. She's making promises to clients we can't keep and confusing our staff with contradictory directives." "She has an MBA," my mother interjected, as if this credential trumped a decade of industry-specific experience. "From State University," I responded, immediately regretting the elitist tone. "That's not the point. The point is, Shield Tech isn't a family business. It's a technology company with investors, a board, and employees who count on clear leadership." My father leaned forward, his expression serious. "Norman, you've done well and we're proud of you. But now it's time to think about the future. Jessica needs security, a career path. As the head of the family, I'm asking you to give her more responsibility." "Head of the family?" I repeated, incredulous. "Dad, I'm 34 years old. I run a multi-million-dollar company. I'm not a child needing direction. The conversation deteriorated from there. I left feeling like I'd traveled back in time to my teenage years, constantly having to justify my decisions to a father who would never fully understand or appreciate my work. Back at the office, Marcus and Ethan expressed their growing concerns. "Norman, we need to talk about Jessica," Marcus began during our Monday morning check-in. "The development team is confused about priorities, and morale is suffering." Ethan nodded. "And 3 potential investors have asked me about our management structure. Word is getting around that there's internal conflict." I rubbed my temples, feeling the weight of both worlds crushing down. "I know. I'll handle it." "We're not just your co-founders," Ethan said quietly. "We're your friends. And as your friends, we need to ask, are you letting family dynamics threaten everything we've built?" It was a fair question, one I had been avoiding. The company's 10-year anniversary celebration was approaching, a perfect opportunity to clarify roles and re-establish clear leadership. Little did I know my father and Jessica had plans of their own for this milestone event. The 10-year anniversary celebration of ShieldTech was meant to be a crowning achievement, a moment to reflect on our journey from a college dorm room to a $30 million cybersecurity leader. I had personally overseen every detail of the event, from the venue selection to the multimedia presentation chronicling our growth. The guest list included our earliest clients who had taken a chance on 3 young graduates, venture capitalists who had funded our expansion, industry partners who had helped us scale, and of course, the entire ShieldTech team, who had made it all possible. 3 days before the event, while reviewing final preparations with our events coordinator, I received an urgent message from Keith, our Chief Financial Officer. "Norman, we need to talk about the Westfield contract. Something's not right." Westfield Technologies was one of our newest enterprise clients, a partnership worth potentially $3 million over 5 years. I had personally led the negotiations, carefully structuring the implementation timeline to ensure we could deliver everything promised. In Keith's office, he pulled up the final contract. "This isn't the version we agreed upon in the leadership meeting," he said, pointing to several modified clauses. "The implementation timeline has been accelerated by 2 months, and there are service guarantees here that weren't in the original." My stomach dropped as I recognized Jessica's digital signature at the bottom, alongside the client's. "When did this happen?" "The changes were made last week. I assumed you had authorized Jessica to finalize the details." "I hadn't." Further investigation revealed Jessica had accessed our contract management system using my credentials, which she must have obtained by watching me log in during a previous meeting. I immediately called an emergency meeting with Marcus, Ethan, and our legal counsel, Lisa Bennett. "This is a serious breach of protocol," Lisa explained after reviewing the situation. "The modified contract commits us to penalties if we miss these accelerated deadlines, which, frankly, are nearly impossible to meet." "Can we void it?" I asked. Lisa grimaced. "Not without potentially losing the client and creating significant legal and reputation issues." Jessica represented herself as having signing authority. Marcus ran his hands through his hair in frustration. The development team would need to pull resources from at least 3 other projects to meet these new deadlines. Projects with existing commitments. The implications were staggering. Meeting the modified timeline would strain our resources and potentially compromise quality. Not meeting it would trigger financial penalties and damage our reputation for reliability. "We have to try to make it work," I finally decided. "I'll speak with the team leads about redistributing resources, and I'll deal with Jessica after the anniversary event." As the meeting concluded, my assistant appeared at the door. "Norman, your father is here. He's asking to join your next meeting." Indeed, Walter Anderson stood in the reception area, dressed in a business suit I hadn't seen since his company's bankruptcy. "I thought I'd see how preparations are coming along for the big event," he said with unusual enthusiasm. "Dad, I'm in the middle of handling a situation." "Perfect timing then. I have some thoughts on how to structure the executive presentations for the anniversary." Without waiting for an invitation, he followed me back to the conference room where Marcus, Ethan, and Lisa were still gathered. "Walter," Marcus greeted my father with professional courtesy, despite the tension evident in his posture. "This is an unexpected visit." "Just thought I'd lend my experience," my father replied, taking a seat as if he belonged there. "After all, I ran a successful business for 40 years before the downturn." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on anyone in the room. His successful business had ended in bankruptcy, while the computer games he had dismissed were now supporting his retirement. "We're actually discussing a sensitive contract issue," I explained, trying to reclaim control of the situation. "Contracts are contracts," my father said dismissively. "The important thing is the anniversary celebration. It's a chance to position the company for its next phase of leadership." The phrasing sent warning signals through my mind. "The company's leadership isn't changing, Dad. Every company evolves, Norman. Speaking of which, where's Jessica? Shouldn't she be part of these discussions as a senior director?" Before I could correct his inflated assessment of Jessica's role, Ethan intervened. "Walter, with all due respect, this is an operational meeting for the founding executive team." My father's expression darkened. "My daughter has expressed concerns about being sidelined from key decisions. As someone who's advised her on her career development, I find that troubling." The atmosphere in the room grew tense. Lisa, sensing the personal nature of the conversation, excused herself tactfully. Once she left, Marcus spoke up. "Walter, we value Jessica's contributions in her area of expertise. But there are aspects of this business that require specific technical knowledge and historical context." "What Marcus means," I added, trying to soften the message, "is that Jessica is still learning the industry. She's only been with us for 11 months. My father stood abruptly. "I see how it is. The same old Norman, unable to share the spotlight. Jessica was right about how you've been treating her." After he left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. "Norman," Ethan said finally, "this has gone beyond family dynamics affecting your judgment. Your father and sister seem to have a specific agenda regarding the company's leadership." "The anniversary event is in 3 days," Marcus added. "Whatever they're planning, I suspect it will happen there." Despite my concerns, I pressed forward with the celebration preparations. The evening of the event arrived, and the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel transformed into a showcase of ShieldTech's journey. Digital displays highlighted our major milestones, and testimonials from clients played on screens throughout the space. My parents arrived early, my father unusually interested in the seating arrangements and program order. Jessica appeared shortly after, wearing an executive-level designer suit that outshone even my own attire. "Isn't this exciting?" she gushed, inserting herself into conversations with key investors as if she had been part of the company's founding story. The formal program began with my welcome address. Standing at the podium, looking out at the 150 guests who represented a decade of relationships, I felt a momentary sense of pride that pushed aside my concerns. 10 years ago, Marcus, Ethan, and I sat in a college dorm room with a vision to make enterprise-grade cybersecurity accessible to businesses of all sizes, I began. We had no funding, no connections, and no guarantee of success. What we did have was a shared belief that every organization deserves to be secure in an increasingly digital world. I highlighted our journey from our first small business client to our current portfolio of over 500 organizations nationwide. I acknowledged the contributions of every department and recognized individual team members who had been with us from the early days. ShieldTech's success isn't my success, I emphasized. It belongs to every person in this room who took a chance on us, who joined our mission, who trusted us with their digital security. As I prepared to introduce Marcus for the next segment, my father suddenly rose from his table near the front. Before anyone could react, he walked purposefully to the stage and took the microphone from my hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he had perfected over decades in construction. "As the father of Norman and Jessica Anderson, I couldn't be prouder of what this family has accomplished." A murmur of confusion spread through the room. This was not part of the program. Norman has built something impressive, there's no doubt. But a company entering its second decade needs to think about succession and fresh perspectives. He gestured toward Jessica, who stood with a practiced, humble smile. "That's why I'm thrilled to share that Jessica Anderson will be stepping into the role of Chief Executive Officer, guiding ShieldTech into its next chapter." The ballroom fell completely silent. Investors exchanged glances. Employees froze with champagne glasses midway to their lips. Marcus and Ethan stared in undisguised shock. I felt a strange calm descend over me as I watched this coup attempt unfold in real time. All the months of subtle undermining, the conversations behind my back, the manipulation of my parents, it all suddenly made perfect sense. With deliberate movements, I returned to the microphone. My father looked triumphant, clearly expecting me to play along with this public ambush rather than create a scene. Instead, I looked directly at him and said simply, "Just keep going." My voice was cold, controlled, and carried a finality that silenced even his bluster. In that moment, something shifted. The power dynamic that had defined our relationship since my childhood suddenly reversed. The rest of the evening continued in a haze of awkward conversations and forced smiles. But beneath the surface, I was already formulating my response to this unprecedented challenge to everything I had built. While most people would have stormed out after such a public betrayal, I remained at the anniversary celebration, shaking hands, thanking clients, and behaving as if my father's announcement had been nothing more than an uncomfortable joke. My calm exterior masked the tactical planning happening beneath. "Marcus, Ethan, my office. 7 a.m. tomorrow," I whispered as guests began departing. They nodded gravely, understanding the gravity of our situation. I also made a point to have brief, warm conversations with our 3 largest investors who were present. "Joseph, I'd appreciate your insights on something tomorrow. Could your schedule accommodate a 9 a.m. call?" By the time I left the venue, I had scheduled early meetings with everyone whose support would be critical in the coming days. At 6:30 the next morning, I was already at my desk when Marcus arrived, followed closely by Ethan. "That was the most surreal event I've ever attended," Marcus said, collapsing into a chair. "Your father actually tried to install Jessica as CEO, in public, without board approval. The question is, what's our next move?" Ethan asked, always focused on actionable strategy. I pushed a folder across the desk. I was up all night preparing this. "It's our company bylaws, ownership structure, and board composition." Together, we reviewed the documents that had been drafted during our initial funding rounds and modified through subsequent investments. According to this, Marcus noted, executive appointments require board approval, with the founding members holding special voting rights. "Exactly," I confirmed. "My father has no legal authority to appoint anyone." But this isn't just about legalities. It's about perception and confidence. If investors, clients, or employees believe there's unstable leadership, we're vulnerable. "We need to get ahead of the narrative," Ethan said, his marketing mind already formulating communication strategies. Over the next 3 hours, we developed a comprehensive plan. First, individual calls to board members explaining the situation and reaffirming leadership. Second, a company-wide email clarifying that no leadership changes were occurring. Third, personal outreach to key clients to ensure continuity of relationships. By noon, I had secured statements of support from every board member. By 3 p.m., all major clients had been contacted. The immediate crisis of perception was being managed, but the underlying family issue remained. "You need to understand exactly what Jessica has been doing," Marcus advised. "This couldn't have been a spontaneous act." He was right. I needed intelligence, and I knew exactly where to get it. That evening, I met Sarah for dinner at a quiet restaurant away from our usual family spots. "I was hoping you'd call," she said as soon as we were seated. "Last night was insane. I need to know everything, Sarah. When did this plan start? Who else is involved?" Sarah sighed deeply. "It's worse than you think, Norman. Jessica's been planning this for months. She's in financial trouble, serious trouble." The story emerged piece by piece. Jessica had made a series of poor investments, leveraging herself with high-interest loans. She was facing potential bankruptcy, possibly worse if some of her financial maneuvering crossed legal lines. She convinced Dad that if she had control of ShieldTech, she could solve her problems quickly and quietly, Sarah explained. She told them, "You wouldn't even notice the difference since you're so focused on the technical side." And Dad bought this? You know how he is about Jessica. Plus, I think he sees it as reclaiming some control after losing his own company. Living through you and Jessica is his way of staying relevant. This information was crucial, but I needed more than hearsay. I need evidence, Sarah. Documented proof of what Jessica's been doing. "I thought you might," she replied, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Jessica asked me to help her organize some files. These are copies of emails between her and Dad and some financial documents she had me scan. I'm not proud of taking them, but what they're doing isn't right." The drive contained everything I needed and more. Emails discussing how to transition control gradually, financial records showing Jessica's mounting debts, and most damning draft press releases announcing her as CEO dated months before the anniversary event. With this intelligence, I launched what I privately called Operation Truth. First, I engaged a forensic accountant to analyze Jessica's activities within our systems. The results were shocking. She had accessed confidential client information without authorization, modified contracts as we'd already discovered, and even attempted to reroute a small portion of client payments to a separate account. Next, I documented every instance where her actions had caused operational issues or client complaints. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Jessica had been systematically creating problems that I would have to fix, then using my frequent emergency interventions to suggest to our parents that I was struggling to manage the company effectively. The most disturbing discovery came from our network security logs. Jessica had attempted to access our intellectual property database, containing the source code and architecture for our core security products. Had she succeeded, she could have potentially sold this information or used it as leverage. Armed with comprehensive evidence, I prepared for the confrontation that could no longer be avoided. But first, I needed to protect the company from potential fallout. I met with our legal team to draft contingency documents, including a formal removal of Jessica's system access and a clearly defined limitation of her authority. I scheduled a special board meeting for the following week, with a detailed agenda that included a vote of confidence in the current leadership structure. 3 days after the anniversary debacle, I invited my parents and Jessica to my home, neutral territory away from both the office and their house. They arrived together, Jessica looking confident, my father stern, my mother anxious. They clearly expected me to capitulate after having time to come to my senses. "Thank you for coming," I began formally once we were seated in my living room. "After the events at our company anniversary, we need to discuss some serious matters. If this is about the announcement timing, I apologize," my father said, not sounding apologetic at all. "But the decision is sound. ShieldTech needs fresh leadership for its next phase." "That's not your decision to make," I replied calmly. "And before we go any further, I need to be absolutely clear. Jessica will not be becoming CEO of ShieldTech. Not now, not ever." Jessica laughed dismissively. "Norman, don't be dramatic. It's not like you're being pushed out. You'll still be involved in the technical side, which is what you love anyway." "What I love," I said, maintaining my composure, "is the company I built from nothing into a $30 million enterprise that currently employs 78 people and secures the digital assets of over 500 clients." I opened my laptop and turned it toward them. "What I don't love is discovering that my sister has been actively undermining that company while positioning herself to take control." Over the next hour, I methodically presented the evidence. Jessica's unauthorized contract modifications, her attempts to access restricted systems, the financial documents showing her desperate need for cash, the emails between her and my father planning this takeover. My mother gasped at several revelations. My father's face grew increasingly pale. Jessica's confident facade cracked, then crumbled entirely. "You had no right to access my personal emails," she finally sputtered, a weak defense against the mountain of evidence. "You had no right to try to steal my company," I countered. "A company that, by the way, has been supporting this entire family since Dad's business failed." The harsh truth hung in the air between us. For years, I had softened realities to protect feelings, especially my father's pride. That ended today. "Norman," my father began, his voice having lost its usual authority, "we only wanted what's best for everyone. What Jessica needs," I interrupted, "is to face the consequences of her actions like an adult. What she needs is not to be constantly rescued at the expense of others." I closed my laptop. "I've called a special board meeting for Monday. The board will vote on reaffirming the current leadership structure and officially clarifying that Jessica has no executive authority within ShieldTech." "You can't do this," Jessica said, tears forming in her eyes. "I'll lose everything. My creditors." "Your financial problems are not ShieldTech's responsibility," I said firmly. "Though out of respect for this family, I'm prepared to help you resolve them, provided you resign immediately and agree to professional financial counseling." My father stood abruptly. "This is how you treat family? After everything we've done for you?" The question was so disconnected from reality that I actually laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Dismissed my passion as computer games? Criticized my achievements while praising Jessica for minimal effort? Let me support you financially after your business failed, then conspired with Jessica to take over mine?" My mother reached for his arm. "Walter, please. Norman is right. We've made terrible mistakes here." The confrontation continued for another hour, cycling through anger, denial, and finally, reluctant acceptance. By the time they left, Jessica had agreed to resign, my father had retreated into wounded silence, and my mother had apologized through tears. The board meeting on Monday was anticlimactic after the family drama. With unanimous support, my position as CEO was reaffirmed, and additional governance measures were put in place to prevent similar situations in the future. Jessica cleared out her office that afternoon, supervised by security to ensure no company data left with her. As promised, I arranged for financial advisors to help her negotiate with creditors and develop a sustainable repayment plan. Our relationship was damaged, possibly beyond repair, but family obligation ran deep. The most unexpected conversation came a week later, when my father asked to meet privately. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, looking older and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "I owe you an apology, Norman. A lifetime of apologies, really." He explained how his own father had dismissed his interest in construction, pushing him toward a college education he didn't want, how he'd succeeded anyway, proving his father wrong through sheer determination, and how he'd somehow still ended up repeating the pattern with me, dismissing my passion because it didn't fit his definition of real work. "I was wrong," he admitted simply. "What you've built is extraordinary, and instead of being proud and supportive, I tried to control it, to make it conform to my outdated ideas." The acknowledgement I had sought for decades had finally arrived, though not in circumstances I would have chosen. "I appreciate that, Dad," I said, finding that the validation I had once desperately craved now meant less than I expected. I had outgrown the need for his approval somewhere along the way. In the aftermath, ShieldTech not only survived but thrived. The challenge to leadership, once resolved decisively, actually strengthened client and investor confidence. Our transparency throughout the process demonstrated the company's commitment to sound governance and ethical operation. 6 months later, in a move that surprised even me, I invited Sarah to join the company as our Community Outreach Director, a role that matched her natural empathy and communication skills. Unlike Jessica's appointment, this one was based on merit and followed proper protocols. "I won't let you down," Sarah promised on her first day. "I know you won't," I replied, confident in her abilities rather than just her relation to me. As for Jessica, our relationship remained distant but civil. She found a position with a marketing firm in another state, a fresh start away from the shadow of family expectations. My father and I established a new relationship based on mutual respect rather than authority and validation. ShieldTech continued its growth trajectory, reaching the $30 million valuation that had once seemed impossible to the 3 college students working from a cramped dorm room. But more importantly, I had finally established the boundaries necessary to lead both my company and my life on my own terms. 1 year after the anniversary event that nearly tore apart both my company and my family, I sat at the head of a very different dinner table. My parents were there, as was Sarah, who had excelled in her role at ShieldTech. Jessica had declined the invitation, still working through her own journey of accountability and redemption in another state. Marcus and Ethan were present with their families, our bond stronger than ever after weathering the storm together. The dinner celebrated not just ShieldTech's continued success, but a more fundamental achievement: the establishment of healthy boundaries and authentic relationships. The journey to this point had been painful but necessary. After the board meeting that reaffirmed my leadership, I had thrown myself into rebuilding what the crisis had threatened. Our client relationships needed reinforcement, our internal culture required healing, and my own approach to family dynamics demanded serious reflection. The hardest part wasn't standing up to Jessica and Dad, I explained to Dr. Thompson, the therapist I began seeing weekly. It was accepting that I'd enabled the situation by constantly seeking validation from people who weren't equipped to give it. Through those sessions, I came to understand that my drive to prove myself through ShieldTech's success had been both my greatest strength and a significant vulnerability. I had built a $30 million company partly to show my father that my work mattered, making me susceptible to manipulation through his approval. Success built on the need for validation is like a house on sand, Dr. Thompson observed. You need to find firmer ground. That firmer ground came from reconnecting with my original passion for cybersecurity and my genuine desire to protect vulnerable businesses from digital threats. The company wasn't valuable because it impressed my father or supported my family. It was valuable because it served an important purpose in the world. This shift in perspective transformed my leadership. I became more confident in my decisions, less reactive to criticism, and more intentional about the company's direction. The board noticed the change, as did our employees and clients. "You seem different," Marcus commented during a strategy meeting several months after the crisis. "More at peace." He was right. By releasing the need for external validation, I had freed myself to lead authentically. The healing within my family took longer. My father struggled to find his new place in our family dynamic. His patriarchal authority permanently diminished. During a particularly honest conversation, I finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I didn't build Shield Tech to prove you wrong, Dad. I built it because I genuinely believe in protecting people's digital lives. But I did spend years hoping you'd finally see value in my work, and that made me vulnerable to manipulation." He nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting the painful recognition of his role in what had transpired. I measured success by standards that were outdated even in my time. I couldn't see past my own experiences to recognize the world had changed. "We can't change the past," I offered, "but we can build something better going forward." And gradually we did. Our relationship evolved into something more balanced, built on mutual respect rather than authority and validation. My mother, freed from her peacekeeper role, began pursuing interests she had long neglected. Sarah flourished both professionally and personally, no longer caught in the crossfire of family dynamics. As for Jessica, her path was more complicated. The financial counseling I arranged helped her avoid bankruptcy, but rebuilding trust would take years, if it happened at all. We maintained limited contact, each quarterly call slightly less strained than the last. Looking around the dinner table on that anniversary evening, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with company valuations or industry recognition. "I'd like to propose a toast," I said, raising my glass. "Not to Shield Tech's success, though I'm immensely proud of what we've built, but to something more fundamental, the courage to stand for what we believe in, even when it's difficult. And the wisdom to know that real success isn't measured by what others think of us, but by whether we're true to ourselves." The company continued to thrive, reaching and then exceeding the $30 million valuation that had once seemed like an impossible summit. But I no longer saw that number as the measure of my worth or the validation of my choices. The real achievement was the culture we had built, a meritocracy where contributions were valued regardless of title or connection, where innovation flourished because people felt secure enough to take risks, and where leadership was earned through consistent demonstration of capability rather than claimed through manipulation or entitlement. Sarah's department launched a cybersecurity education program for public schools, introducing students to digital safety concepts and potentially inspiring the next generation of security professionals. My father, in an unexpected turn, volunteered to speak to these students about adapting to changing industries and the importance of supporting young people's passions, however unfamiliar they might seem. The lesson I carry forward is this: sometimes the greatest act of love, both for yourself and for others, is establishing clear boundaries. Real relationships, in business and in family, aren't built on obligation or manipulation, but on mutual respect and recognition of each person's intrinsic value. True leadership isn't about titles or control, but about creating environments where people can contribute their best work toward a shared purpose. And lasting success comes not from external validation, but from the alignment between your actions and your deepest values. I built a $30 million company that ended up supporting my entire family. But the most valuable thing I created wasn't measured in dollars. It was the courage to stand firm in my truth, even when those I loved most tried to take it from me. If my story resonates with you in any way, I'd love to hear about times when you've had to establish boundaries with family in your professional life. Has there been a moment when you had to choose between pleasing others and staying true to yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges. Thank you for joining me on this path of growth and self-discovery. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' validation, but by your own integrity and purpose.